had them on line before I dial up. How they claiming they on top and I'm a mile up. Had them on line before I dial up. How they claiming they on top and I'm a mile up. I know the wall's closing in, but don't you dare give up now. Poe believed in me, pull up through some bucks down. Todd told the valet pull the truck round. Push the line up that we drew it, it's just us now. Would you believe me if I told you my granny told me she prayed this? Then booked the surgery just to pull me out of the basement. Right back where I started, nothing to show for a facelift. Got pushed playing Walter White and Davis, never felt so dangerous. The type of power they can't quantify. And name the best from my region, you gotta utter mine. Think of who really putting on, you never come to mind. Rapping like your Spotify, tap you rappers compromise. Yeah, no need to panic, just paint the canvas. If you can feel the static, you're too close, find your balance. Embed the revolution for they prohibition bandwidth. Blood trickle from the leaders who was planning. Had them on, before I dial up. How they claiming that?
What's going on, everybody in Luqman Nation and Black Power Media? This is Jackie Luqman.
And I am Uncle Baba Luqman.
Uncle Baba Luqman. And welcome to another edition of Luqman Nation and Black Power Media.
The most dangerous show on social media, on the most dangerous platform on social media.
Absolutely. So, before we get into anything tonight, first of all, we want to thank you all for your support of Black Power Media.
Always.
All of you who have joined, either, subscribed on YouTube, joined through YouTube, or joined through the website. We appreciate you. We thank you so much. That is greatly, greatly appreciated. And just keep it coming. Invite your friends. Share all of the content here on Black Power Media. Dr. I keep forgetting not to do that. Jared Ball did a show earlier today at 3:00 about and it was an emergency show about the situation with political prisoner Mumia Abu Jamal and his very dire health condition. You have got to go back and check that out so you can have the information that you need to act on that. And if you were not around Sunday night at 8:00, the ear doctor tore it up
he did.
On the turntables. It was beautiful. We had a great time. Yes, we were dancing. No, you'll never see it because we're not great at it. And, we dance like the middle-aged people that we are.
Yep.
And there was also a conversation that I found. I went back and I looked at Jared's conversation with the brother from Ferguson.
Okay.
Which was a really, really great conversation. Also went back and looked at the conversation that Renegade Culture had with Sisse Siddiqui.
Okay. Oh, speaking of Renegade Culture, welcome back, Kalanji.
Welcome
Kalanji
back.
was out for a minute, and so
he wasn't feeling too good.
His
scully was too heavy, and it gave him neck pain.
Right.
And so he's all right now.
Well, it didn't stop his mouth from running because he sure when he came back, he came back. I mean, man. All right. Anyway, the show preceded us, so if you want to go back and look at it, wasn't nothing wrong with that mouth.
Why are you trying to pick beef with
No, I'm saying, I enjoyed it. Kalani, I enjoyed it, man.
We
I'm
did.
glad that you came back, man, with the fire and pepper jalapeno sauce, man.
We
You're
did.
right with me.
We did. People are like, I've never heard of Renegade Culture. Jackie, should we listen to them? Well, if you kind of have a problem with the Luqmans cussing, that's going to be, but you should listen to them. But, we're really, really excited about everything that's coming down the pike.
As
for
Tony
Black
Soprano
Power
say,
Media.
they're a different corporate culture. different but we love them though.
Absolutely, we do. We absolutely do. Look, before we go any further, we've decided that we're gonna have to do this before each of our shows because some people come on here. I guess people don't have anything better to do. I don't understand it. It's a weird thing for me. I don't have a whole lot of time where I just go on people's shows and just make crazy comments. But some people dig doing that kind of stuff. We don't appreciate it. We understand that's the kind of thing that people do, but we do not like it. And we are asking nicely for people not to do it. These are our rules. I try to monitor the chat as closely as I can. But
and
because
and some of our friends who's in the chat, they try to do it too.
yeah, they try to
we have some allies out there.
Yeah, they try to call out folks who are acting crazy in the chat, and I try to catch them. But it's kind of hard to watch the chat because y'all are in the chat having a great conversation all by yourselves. So the chat is moving really fast, and it's hard to watch the chat and have a conversation with Baba over here, and pick out really good quotes that you all are making or questions and pop them up on the screen. So we do our best to monitor the chat for trolls. If we miss one or two, look, just point them out to us and we'll try to get to them. And our rule is we will put you in a timeout for 5 minutes the first time. If you come back with ridiculousness, then we block you. Those are the rules. You know them. Don't be surprised if it happens to you. There is a moderating kind of automatic moderating on the channel that seems to hold comments with some curse words in them. We didn't set that up. That's across the channel. So if you post something with a cuss word in it and you don't see it, it's not because the Luqmans are moderating your chat. That's an automatic thing with the channel, and it just moderates the content just so we don't get in as much trouble for the words that we say, because we intend to get into some trouble for the content that we produce. So
and also we understand that most of the people that come and view and that are that come in and view the content on Black Power Media, we understand that they're here for a reason. So if you're trolling, then you're not down with what we're trying to do. You're not down with what the channel's trying to do, and so basically, you're just in the way. So we're here trying to. This is revolutionary for us. This is revolutionary. This is a mission for us, establishing independent Black Power Media. So if you want to be a clown, a joker, you think that this is something to be played around with, then please find another circus, because it's not a circus over here. Because for real, the people that come to this platform are serious people. Our audience is serious. Black Power Media's audience is serious, and so you're not going to really get, your trolling is not going to gain any traction for real. So you're wasting your time over here. But we're not going to pay much attention to you because we have a show to do.
Yeah, we do have a show to do. Yeah. Thank you, Leah. Before we get started, also, we want to say what's up to everyone in the chat already. What's that? Shaka Ra speaks. Yeah. I'm so excited to see you, bro. We're so excited to see you. We saw your video in response to the ADO. We loved it. It was great. I really do get this excited when I see people especially from the diaspora, coming over and joining in our chat. So that's really exciting. What's going on, brother?
And one of the things that we do here, because there's no haters over here, is please check out Shaka Ra Speaks, because he has his own channel. So, please go over there and check him out, and because he be dropping a lot of good stuff. So so we're all trying to support each other here. There's nobody's trying to be big by making somebody else small. That's not what we do here.
Exactly. That was so good. Yes, it was.
Thank you.
Yes. So, LME, what's going on? Jadarian, how you doing? Let's go down. Corinna Akri Perez, what's going on, sis? David Silberg, Lisa Catlett. Thank you, Lisa. Lisa says she loves the new decorations. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
I am not crafty, but I try.
Because people like Lisa and them, they've been around, man, when we man, they seen our progress. Lisa Catlett and them seen us, man, when we was really in the bunker.
Yes.
For real, right? We were trying, and they stuck with us, but so that means a lot coming from Lisa, because Lisa's been around with us for a while, so she's seen the progression.
Yeah, so we absolutely appreciate that. Thank you, Corinna, for your support. We appreciate you, sis. We love you. Yes. And check out Telejaguar over on YouTube. If you want to understand the struggle of the Raza Nation, check out Telejaguar. It's a great outlet. We love our cousins over there. Okay. So listen, hit the like button, like the video, share. You can subscribe to Black Power Media on Patreon. You can find them on Patreon. You can go to the website, blackpowermedia.org.
Mm-hmm.
You can find them on Twitter, Black Power Media 1, the number 1, and on Facebook on Black Power Media. Of course, you can subscribe to this channel, share this video, all that good stuff. Okay,
Exactly.
You got a beef with me.
Well, I mean, this is it. Our newsletter came out.
Okay,
right?
yes.
So we got, we started this newsletter, and and so I'm because I put together a newsletter. We still have not got that intern yet.
Yes,
so,
he does.
We still haven't got that intern yet. So I do the newsletter, and we're too poor to get an intern, matter of fact. So anyway, you poor because interns are free, right? They work for free.
The unpaid interns are a thing.
Well,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely can't pay one. So but take this here. So I do the newsletter, and so I'm looking for some pictures because I try to improve what I do. I try to do better than I did before, and so I'm looking through these pictures, to try to pick out certain pictures that I can include in the newsletter. And I noticed that there was one thing that was consistent in a lot of these pictures. And I mean, these pictures are going back like to 2019, 2017, 2016. I think there was a picture when we was in Philly, when Bernie Sanders first made his run. But it was something that was always consistent in these pictures. And that is this damn silver purse that seemed to show up everywhere. I mean, this silver is, now let me tell you something. I don't dislike the purse.
You don't?
I don't dislike the purse, but there's a history behind this purse. It's a revolutionary purse. There's a history behind this purse. And so we're starting to see now that this purse really predates us. You won't tell me where you got the purse from. You won't tell me, I don't know if it's a family heirloom, but there, I have people out there who are history buffs like myself, and they do research, unbeknownst to you, they do research on my behalf. And they even came to me, they said, Baba, they said, you might not believe this. And I said, what's that? There's been some pictures that we got, archival pictures, where that purse is there. I said, what you mean? They said, man, we saw a purse, man, with Harry Tubman posing, and it looked like that purse, and she had the pistol right here, and she had the purse like this. I said, no. I said, well, man, you got to send that to me. They said they had another one when where Lee and the other guy when the Civil War came to an end, and you had Sherman and Lee, and when they shook hands, man, they had a black woman. She must have been a slave, but she was like this in the middle of this silver purse. So we're like, where's this purse coming from? And they said, Baba, you wouldn't believe this, man. We've been doing our research, man. We seen this purse somewhere. And I said, really? They said, yeah. They said, man, we seen this purse, man, at gatherings, man, that we didn't. So I said, well, you know what? I said, and she won't tell me where this purse from. Now, she's from Virginia. Her family's from Virginia. So I understand that there's a lot of history, especially African-American history, in that whole area of Jarrett, Emporia, that whole area there. And I'm sure that one day it will come out that this purse is actually was passed down. I'll get the story one day.
Till you do right by my purse,
yeah,
nothing good gonna come to you.
That's what I'm talking about. But but all joking aside, man, I mean, we've been that purse has accompanied us a lot of places, man. I mean, especially that one photo that we got where they had, I'm sure it probably was a relative of yours who served as a nurse during the Civil War, and they actually showed a picture of her like giving medical
digging in
aid,
the purse.
Yeah, giving medical aid to a Union soldier, digging in that silver purse. So,
hold on, let me find a tourniquet for you, soldier.
So I'm gonna find out.
So okay. The funny thing, the really funny thing is about this is that this purse is actually probably like 4 years old, I guess. I'm not good at like I like, accessories. I like jewelry, and as you can see, I love jewelry. But I'm not a fashionista type of person. I like clothes that are comfortable, and he never comments on what I'm wearing unless I wear something too much and it starts to look raggedy. Like a few years ago, I had like a favorite jacket, the black.
Oh yeah.
see the look. You see that look. He hated that jacket because that jacket was. I honestly don't remember how old the jacket was, but he commented on the jacket so much that I really did have to get rid of the jacket.
Right,
And he was so excited when he bought me a new jacket for my birthday.
I had to do it. I mean, it needed doing. It needed doing.
So for him to comment on any accessory piece of clothing that I have, it has gotten on his nerves. He doesn't want to see it anymore. So, because otherwise he really doesn't pay attention to stuff unless I look really, really good in it. And he thinks, I'm sexy in it.
Yep.
Otherwise, he just really doesn't pay attention to stuff. So just the fact that you brought up the purse lets me know that it's time for another purse. Okay, I will get another purse. But the purse has been with us to every demonstration we've been to just about since we've been together.
You got maced in that purse.
I did. I got maced in that purse.
Maced with that purse.
I did. And we went to the first Black Lives Matter protest, the big one. In 2000, we got married in 2013. That was probably in 2015.
Yeah, when they first started. When they first started being a thing.
Yeah. The purse went to Baltimore with us, but okay. All right.
Well,
okay.
But we say this and we'll be moving on. But we just saying this like, man, we ain't gotta be mad all the time. We can have fun, and that's what we're doing. We having fun. We ain't gotta be mad all the time. It's Black Power Media, but you ain't gotta be mad all the time. So But anyway, I'd like to again remind everybody, because we've been having this kind of problem with Black Power Media, and it's just a friendly reminder is that please hit the like button for real, because. I don't understand these algorithms. I don't understand. See, this is these scam likely folks. And they're not getting anything from me.
We got all this machinery in here. Things start singing and making noise. We don't know what it is.
People, but we've been having this kind of issue, and I know it's not intentional. But please hit those like buttons. I know the content is good. I watch the other shows myself, and I get caught up in it. But I have to remember, to push the like button, because they really don't want us to have this.
Right.
Come on, YouTube, and they're finding any kind of excuse this, to not really have a platform like this. So we need your help, and so there it is.
There it is. So look, you and I got together because we thought each other were hot, of course.
Yeah.
Yes. But we were surprised to find that we both had a lot of the same political kind of ideologies, leanings, especially in regard to Pan-Africanism.
Sure.
And I mean, I guess people would think, well, how hard is it to find another Pan-Africanist?
Right? If only you knew.
Exactly. And that you have the kind of chemistry with that you want to, because people are people. I don't care what their political ideology is. But I've always been really curious, and I love your history. I don't like to call them stories because they're not like stuff that you made up. This is stuff that you've been through and you've experienced.
Yeah.
So I thought it would be a good idea for us to talk about how we became Pan-Africanists. Like individually, what was it that convinced us that Pan-Africanism was right for us? So I'm curious, like, what was it for you?
Well, I mean, I've always had affinity for Black people. My journey to where I'm at now, and I'm still on the journey, spiritually and mentally, and I'm still on that journey. So I haven't arrived anywhere, but but I've always had this internal love for Black people. I've always had a dislike for the type of abuses that we suffered, and some of the things that I went through personally with the police and, other stuff that comes with being a Black man, Black person in this country. So I've always had that kind of feeling, even though it never turned into hatred for white people. But I mean, because that it just never got that far. But I just, I seen injustices around me. And part of it was that I didn't see I grew up a Christian. I grew up in Christian and been, and been in the church and all that. And I really didn't see the churches that I went to, that I grew up in. I didn't see them really talking about that. Like we would see, I would see things around me as a young person, and I never understood why. It wasn't no sense of that. It didn't seem like it was important. Of course, we got the regular, Christian lessons and stuff, but it was really like, I'm tired of, like Malcolm, like I was tired of always being taught to, do good just so I can get some mansion in the sky,
right? As
opposed to, how can I make life better for me and mine down here?
Mm-hmm.
So, I've been on this journey, and I went from Christianity, then went to Islam, and I found, even in Islam, I found the same problem. I found that when I became a Muslim, I found that, and me believing that, Islam was more militant,
Mm-hmm.
and I think a lot of us have the when we think of that, we think of Nation Islam,
right.
The militancy.
Right.
But I didn't come through the Nation Islam. I came through what they call Orthodox Islam, Sunni
Mm-hmm.
Islam. And, it's like, wow, this, I was thinking that they would have this kind of militancy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was surprised when I was living in Philly. I was surprised that I ran into the same issues there. Black people becoming something and basically trying to distance themselves from the struggle,
mm-hmm.
distance themselves from the Black struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And I give you a case in point. When I first became a Muslim, this was during the time, of course, at the height of the crack epidemic, and right across the street from the mosque, and this mosque was really, they did a lot to clean up the community. They did.
Mm-hmm.
So that I give them credit for. And they got it to the point where, they got rid of some of the drug dealers,
mm-hmm.
and started cleaning up. And I remember we had a meeting, and I wanted to do more. I wanted to set up certain things, and
right.
And when I brought up the national Black nationalism
mm-hmm.
part that that I was always into, I was told by Black Muslims that Black people weren't my problem.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I was told by some of the brothers that Black people is no longer your concern because you're Muslim now, and and nationalism. And they would quote a hadith that I think was taken out of context, but they will quote a hadith that says, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, some negative things against nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
And I still believe that was taken out of context,
Well, hold on for a second, because I think it's important what you just said, that you believe it was taken out of context, because people should know that, and I am bragging on you right now. People should know that Baba used to be an imam. So he wasn't just, a lay person in the Muslim faith.
Just brother Muslim, right?
Just brother Muslim. Here's a man who studied the Quran. You taught yourself Arabic.
Yeah.
And could read and speak.
Yeah, somewhat.
Speak Arabic, and ended up an imam teaching the Quran. So you understood the faith and the holy text better than a whole lot of the people that you were around with.
I understood because I think, before I became Muslim,
mm-hmm.
there was a brother from New York. And my first introduction to what I would call Afrocentric studies or African American studies came from this brother who lived in New York. And he used to come down to Camden.
Mm-hmm.
And he would hold these classes at the house of my barber. And my barber was very into African nationalism, and he was really very into all those things. And so I remember getting my haircut done one time, and I used to hear him talk in the barbershop because Black barbershop, you hear all kinds of stuff. But my barber would always talk about things that about African history.
Mm-hmm.
He would talk about Egypt, ancient Egypt, and stuff I never heard before, stuff I never was taught in school. And so it attracted me. I would always perk up when I would hear his conversations as opposed to the other conversations that were going on at the time. But I was like, man, I said, this is attracting me. And I would ask him, he would share books with me and stuff. And so he invited me to this class. that he had at his house, and it was given by this brother. I can't remember the brother's name; it's been so long ago. But he, this brother would come down from New York, and he would hold these classes free of charge, wouldn't charge us nothing. And so I would go and sit on the classes, and we started off with Stolen Legacy. A lot of people who've been around know that book. And so he taught us how to Stolen Legacy, and then we advanced to other books and stuff. And I started to really become interested in African American history, sort of like what John Henry Clark was, where I just knew that, we had more history than what we were being taught.
Right.
And so when I was going to these classes and stuff, I started to, that started to perk my interest. And I already had a thirst, I already gravitated towards knowledge anyway. Like I even as a kid, I've always loved to learn. So, so the more that I start hearing these things, the more that I started was like, wow, I want to know more. I want to know more. And so anyway, when I wind up living in Philly, and I lived in the same neighborhood that the move bombing happened, Osage Avenue.
Oh wow!
Yeah, the mosque that I attended was like a few blocks from there, and I lived maybe like a couple of blocks from Osage Avenue. So I wasn't there when the bombing happened. Not that I wasn't there then, but I was there when they were still building it. They were when they were reconstructing the neighborhood. And so anyway, so that's even as a Muslim, I kind of I kind of start to see a pattern. At first I thought it was just a Christian thing, but I started to see a pattern when it came to our folk, and I started to put two and two together, and I started to see where if people were criticizing Black Christians for trying to be too white, I saw, and this is my opinion, I saw where Black Muslims were trying to be too Arab.
Oh,
and that bothered me because I didn't leave Christianity just to be oppressed by somebody else's culture.
Oh man! So,
and even at that young age, I was like in my 20s, not too young, but I had that much understanding that I'm like, well, I really didn't like the Eurocentric way that Christianity was taught to me,
right?
And I damn sure ain't liking this Arab centric because it's not the language or anything or even the Islamic rituals, which I understand has its roots in Arabia. What I didn't like was those things that had nothing to do with religion.
Like what?
Dress codes. The way that some of the brothers would and I don't want to get too much into this, but where some of the brothers related to the Muslim women, the way that some brothers who I grew up with, all of a sudden can't speak English now because it was this imitation.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, let me tell you something. Self-hatred is really when you really see when people want to deny their own self. It plays mental tricks on you where you actually start to believe you're something else.
Wow.
And I've seen this. I told one brother one time, I asked him, I was said something to him in conversation, and he said, brother, I don't understand. And I looked at him. I said, why are you talking like that? I said, you grew up with, where I grew up at. How you going to, all of a sudden you stop, So I started to see that there's more to our condition and to our condition than what I understood, and that made me wanted to go further and seek more. So and so as I went on and I started getting books and stuff, and I had my little scrapes and stuff with the law, and I've been to jail, in and out of jail, and all this kind of stuff, and I could say this, without any shame in it because I don't live that way today. But then I went to prison for 6 years, and when I was in prison, that's when I was really got into it, and I really started to study a lot of Pan-African, and a lot of African history and all those other kind of things, and so once I got into that, when I got paroled. you know, that's that. I was on that mission. I was on that mission where I was going to find somewhere where I can express this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I wound up moving to Newark, New Jersey. And Newark was a little bit better, but still, I ran into the same thing with the Muslim community.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard a bunch of Youssef when Jared Ball was talking to him. He said something that related to me. And he said, you know, he outgrew his Muslim brothers and sisters when it came to this. And I understood that. I understood it because it got to the point where that was my experience too. It was my experience when Cory Booker, and I was on Cory Booker's transition team.
Right.
You know, Cory Booker, when he ran for the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, the first time, he wanted the faith community to be a part of his transition. I was part of that.
Right.
So, and basically, we had, we had Booker. Booker was willing to do anything for us in the city of Newark. We could have had what we wanted. But because of the infighting, because everybody wants to be the one, you know, and
everybody wants to see their name on the marquee.
Yeah, right. It's not about the people. It's about my ego. It's about seeing my name in lights, and you know. And so what happened? Booker got angry with us, and he said, you know, look, I don't need to see you guys anymore. And, not just the Muslims. I mean, this was he's faith community. But the Muslims were really well established in Newark, so you know, so it was a lot more of us. But it got to the point where Booker just got fed up. He was like, "You guys don't even know what you want to do."
Wow. And
I've seen that a ton of times. So anyway, get back to your question about why Pan-Africanism. Well, in my study is that I found out that was the only thing that was working for Black people. And so people say, "Well, what do you mean it was working for Black people?" I said, "Well, I can go. You know, when I started studying Pan-Africanism." Of course, I understand that Garvey wasn't the first Pan-Africanist, but that's where I started.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I didn't start with W.B. Du Bois. I mean Du Bois. I didn't start with the with the Niagara Conference.
Right.
I ain't know nothing about that.
Right.
All I knew is this Black man named Garvey. And when I started to started to read about Marcus Garvey, the Honorable Marcus Garvey, I'd like to give him that respect. I said, man, this is a bad Black man. Yeah. You know, when I started to see, I said, man, this is a bad Black man. I started trying to read up on everything on him. And I was like, yeah, this man was doing this stuff in the 1920s. I said, you know, laid the blueprint already. And we still trying to reinvent the wheel. But I said, here's a man that laid the blueprint and not just talked about it, actually did it. Right? Actually did it. Right. Actually galvanized and inspired so many Black people that he still to this day has not been outdone in any Black movement. Nope. 12 million Black people were following Marcus Garvey just here. Right. Not to mention in England, right, down in the Caribbean, right, which are all over. But in Africa, just in this country alone, he had 12 million people that was following him. There was a historian that I remember seeing him on a program somewhere, and he said that Marcus Garvey's organization was so big amongst Black Americans that every Black family had at least one member in their family that was associated with UNIA. That's right, the United Negro Improvement Association, which was his organization. And we're talking about every Black family in the country. Exactly, had at least one family member that has some connection to the Garveyist movement. Wow. Yep. Wow. So I seen that, and I started to look at his program. You know, white folks that had done they tried to ridicule this man by focusing on things that really didn't matter to me. You know, he lost his mind when he got exiled to England on this and that and the other. But, you know, again, I understand that because he was such a threat, you know, the propaganda was to diminish him in our eyes. Right. But, I mean, here's a man that inspired Black people, man, to really commit to building a nation. You know, Marcus Garvey said that this whole world is built on bluff. And people didn't understand that. Explain that. Yeah. Well, built on bluff. White supremacy is a myth. We know that. But what did white people gain from that myth? What did they conquer from that myth? We know that they're not superior.
Right, right.
But the bluff of white supremacy is what got them a lot of things.
Conquered the whole world.
Exactly. So, so Garvey said that this whole world is bluff.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And so we understand today that that even when America started, America was just some colonies. But the bluff is that we're going to form our own nation. And they bluffed against one of the most powerful militaries at that time, which was the British Empire.
Right.
So that's the bluff. Garvey was like, hey, look, what's preventing us from doing the same thing? And this was unheard of for a black man to say that. This was unheard of when everybody else in this country trying to be more American.
Right.
You know what I mean? Trying to be let white folks or this society, trying to integrate and become part of this thing. Garvey was like, why don't we just don't make our own thing?
Right.
And so what the bluff was, and it wasn't really a bluff, but then he started to put it into practice. He formed the government. He started to businesses was growing. Connections with the continent was growing.
Right.
I mean the ship line, know, and and like I said, you had a lot of black people, even some black so-called black-centric, Afrocentric authors who didn't like Garvey, who were saying, oh, the ships were shoddy, oh, the ships were this, the ship were that. The fact remains is he got them. He got them.
Right? And the purpose and the reason he got them.
Exactly.
He did all this to facilitate trade between Africa and Africans in the United States and throughout the diaspora. He was trying to mend those ties between a people who had been severed from each other by this white supremacist bluff in several ways, not only colonization on the continent, but the transatlantic slave trade throughout the rest of the world.
Well, Garvey saw that white folks was getting rich from African resources.
How about that?
So, it was like, well, look, they wouldn't be nothing without Africa. So if they ain't nothing without Africa, we could be something with Africa.
Right.
Because it ain't like they going to Russia and getting it.
That exactly.
They ain't going to Italy and getting it. They ain't going somewhere where they are indigenous to the land. They going to where we're from, getting it and enriching themselves off of it and telling us we can't have it. Right. So Garvey was like, nah, that belongs to us anyway. So, we're going to put this in place. And one of the things too, Jackie, that appealed to me with the Garveyists, because I'm a Garveyite. I understand there's different forms of Pan-Africanism, or different concepts of Pan-Africanism, but I'm personally a Garveyite, and Garvey, it wasn't just the formation of governments and these different offices that he established, but then what I liked was he said we need to have a military, that black people can't do nothing. Black people can't really have self-determination without having protection. Right. And that's what all the military is. Now, if anybody wants to think that Garvey was like, that he was somehow, like off the road with that, there's an incident that you and I studied where they were lynching Italians in this country. You guys can look it up, but there was a incident that happened down in Florida, I believe, and these Italian immigrants were lynched. And so what happened was, of course, they lynched 18 black people at the same time. But what happened is that the Italian government, Italy, got involved. Now I want y'all to stay with me on this. These Italians that got lynched was in this country, but that didn't stop the Italian government, from getting involved because what? They're Italians, right? So the Italian government, it was a really big diplomatic mess that the United States had with Italy. Now you got to remember, now we ain't talking about the United States of today. We're talking about a United States that was a backward, agricultural, third world rate nation that really nobody really paid much attention to. Right. We ain't talking about the superpower of the day. And so Italy was like, yo, y'all got to do something about this. Well, to make a long story short, America wound up paying reparations to the Italian government,
right,
for the lynchings that happened with those Italians. But it took a nation state for Italy to come in and back these people up. This is all Garvey was saying. And then Garvey was like, look, our position would be more secure. We would be with a strong Africa. We our wealth would be we would have more wealth. If the white man's getting rich off of Africa, then damn the hell, why can't we?
Right.
You know,
right,
but
right.
but our relationship with Africa wouldn't be the relationship that the white man had. See, the Pan-Africanist relationship with Africa is in cooperation. And you know, with our brothers and sisters on the continent, where the white man was just exploitative.
Right.
So his thing was, we just want to just use it. We don't care about the people. We don't care about nothing else. But that's not our relationship to the continent. That's not what the Pan-African relationship is. And so it was like, if we go there and develop this relationship with our brothers and sisters on the continent and economically develop, then it's not exploitation. Right. You know, and you know, so it's cooperation. It's cooperation. And seeing that that's our birthright anyway. The white man has no business. Europe didn't have no business getting the resources out of there. They just took it, you know. Right. So this is what really appealed to me. And I just felt like that I seen that there wasn't this understanding. Now it's getting better now amongst our people here. You know, ADOS and that stuff all aside. But I think for the majority of us, it's starting to sink in. And you could tell it's starting to sink in with the amount of migration that African Americans are having to the continent. Right. There's a lot of migration to the continent from African Americans. So so there's a large section of our population here that is reconnecting with the continent. Right. So I mean, so I just felt like everything else that I seen after Garveyism, I didn't see it work. I didn't see it work for us in mass. I didn't see that type of success happen with no other movement. It ain't gonna happen with ADOS. It's not gonna happen with nothing else. And to me, if we were to reestablish now the Garvey UNA is still around. Let me just say that. Yeah, the organization still exists. The organization is still around. But just like so many of our organizations, you know, they're not getting any support. They're not getting the support they you know, and you know, we've been conditioned so much as Black people on this individual thing. You know, I mean, you know, we can't go to an organization and just be a worker bee. No, we got we got to be the head of it. Right. You know, we get mad because nobody's paying attention to what we say. So then we got to go make our own thing. We got to make our own thing. And then there's the and I think Ricky Ryan, she said this term that I really like. If it's not her, someone said it. But they said the inspirational industrial complex. And I like that. So so you got a lot of us that got into that. And so the focus of being an independent nation, being an independent nation, man, which is nothing wrong with that. And we've been made to feel that there's something wrong with us looking out for our own interests. We get into these petty debates of, Americanism, new tribalism, and all these other isms, when in fact, as an African brother said one time, you could take a tree, throw it in the river, and leave it there 1,000 years, it'll never turn into a crocodile. So we need to stop playing these games with ourselves about, what we wish to be, what we would like to be, and deal with who we really are. Yeah. You know what I mean? And understand that everybody else, know the importance of Africa. The Chinese are finding out the Chinese are there because they know the importance of Africa. Everybody else is there because they know the America is setting up AFRICOM and all this stuff because they understand the importance of Africa and they want to hold on to it. So and France ain't never left because they understand that their wealth and stuff comes from Africa. We are the only ones that want to talk about how Africa is not important. We're the only folks that's sitting around here talking about how Africa is not important.
It's not important to us. We ain't got no connection to Africa. Every European nation that colonized the continent now still recognizes the importance of Africa. Right. Because they still have neocolonialism in the same countries that they used to colonize with their Western corporations.
Exactly.
They're still stealing those people's resources, still exploiting the people, while they're telling us, no, you're American. You don't have anything to do with these people over here.
Right.
And we're believing them. But all of the European nations are getting together, still talking about how much more can we take from Africa.
And you know what gets me is, I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because, you know, you have this debate with certain groups and, you know, they talk about how Africans come here and they don't like us and this and that and the other. But what they don't understand is that it's the white man that tell them not to like us. I ran into African brothers, man, that I work with who told us that this State Department, I won't say our State Department because it don't belong to me, but the United States State Department tell Africans, stay away from African Americans.
That is exactly
I've heard
what
quite
they
a
do.
few Africans say this. There's a African young lady who's an author. I heard her interview on NPR, and she said the same thing. She said they tell us to stay away from African Americans. So, you know, but yet it's the same white man that's sitting around telling us that we're American and somehow we're above them. So, you know, so we you know, this whole divide and conquer, then we want to make movements out of that.
I just don't understand. Look here. I just blocked a user, P. Burley, who came in here with that ADOS Pan-Africanism isn't reciprocal kind of stuff. Someone asked a valid question a little bit earlier. Let me see. Todd Mack asked, you know, he wondered why, always wondered why no African nation intervened on our behalf, like Italy intervened on the behalf of Italian immigrants here in the United States. And he was answered correctly. Imperialism, U.S. imperialism, and European colonialism.
Well, let's look at this. Africa didn't gain most African countries didn't gain so-called independence until just 50 years ago.
And what did they gain independence from?
Right. From
European colonialism.
Now this is the thing. Because that is a valid question, but that's the reason why we have to understand the history. Because African nations only became somewhat independent. And it was a false independence, we know that. But they only became independent as so-called sovereign nation states, and we need to really look at the word sovereign. But sovereign nation states only 50 years ago. No later than probably 60 years ago. And then you got to understand that United States been a nation by that time for what, a couple hundred years?
Right.
You know what I mean? So then you're saying, you know, you're asking for these nations that have to rebound from the greatest brain drain, the greatest extraction of not only mineral wealth, material wealth, but the greatest extraction of human wealth. You know, so we have to understand that, you know, Africa, they suffered the greatest extraction of its resources. So then when the time came that these nations were supposed to be independent, they were independent in name only.
Right.
They were still being, you know, they were being ruled by neocolonialism, which is colonialism in blackface.
Right. They were ruled by puppets that the United States and its allies and former colonizers of the continent, Britain, Germany, Brussels,
Belgium.
That's the country I was thinking of. All of those nations got together. Most of them are in the EU now. All of them got together and decided we don't like leaders who led African nations to independence from colonialism, like the leaders, the 10, and this is just 10. This isn't even all of them. These people like Patrice Lumumba, who led the Congo to independence in 1961, who was assassinated by the CIA and Western forces, like Thomas Sankara, who led Burkina Faso to independence in 1987, who was assassinated.
Yep.
But Fred Hampton here in the United States, now you understand why he had to be targeted, because he was a Marxist, Leninist, internationalist who was pushing for socialism and African unity, with people here in the United States and the continent. Malcolm X. This is an African publication, by the way, that this list has come from. Martin Luther King Jr., also an internationalist who understood the importance of Africa to the struggle of Black people in this country. But also on the continent, Amilcar Cabral led Guinea-Bissau to independence in 1973. He was assassinated by the West. Tom Mboya, Kenya, 1969. So the issue has never been, and let me, so you can have this article. This is from the African Exponent. I'm going to drop the link here in the chat for you so you can have it. This has not been an issue of African nations didn't want to help and support the struggle for liberation of Black people in this country. African nations were not allowed to struggle for their own independence without interference from the colonizing nations that control them. And then when they did gain independence, the leaders who led those independence movements were not allowed to rule the newly independent states. They were assassinated or removed. I mean, you don't believe me? Ask any historian, any Black historian you will find on this channel. They will tell you the exact same thing. We plan to talk to some of those people, but this issue of Africans not supporting the Black struggle, that's never been true.
Well, let me tell you how Africans did support the struggle.
Come on now.
Even during their weakened state, when they were in so-called independence, we all talk about the civil rights legislation that Johnson signed, and all of those things that came with that. And a lot of us attribute that a lot to the rebellions that happened in the United States. The white folks call them riots, we call them rebellions, and that kind of pushed this country into passing these civil rights bills and stuff. And that's partly true, but it's not the whole truth. The real truth is that that has something to do with it. But what really moved this government into passing these civil rights legislation is that these newly independent African countries were sending diplomats over here.
Come on now.
And so these diplomats were, for the first time, really finding out how bad Black people were being treated here, because the white man didn't discriminate. The white man was doing it to him too. So what happened was, a lot of these African diplomats was going back home. Now, mind you, you got the United Nations, and Malcolm X, El Haj Malik Shabazz, and them that was always talking about bringing the case to the United Nations. But the United States government was embarrassed, because here it is. This is in the midst of the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union are fighting not only these covert wars, but they're fighting an ideological war.
Right.
So communism, socialism versus this capitalism. So what happened is that the United States trying to compete with the Soviet Union on the ideological front, with this freedom and democracy and free markets and capitalism and stuff, it was being undermined by the racism here that was starting to be the issue with these newly independent countries. Because it wasn't just Africa. You had the Bandung Conference, and you had all these other things where you had a lot of these former colonized nations who were starting to really come into their own, and they're starting to understand, like, we don't how would we want to tie our wagon to America when the way America treat Black people? So so the African diplomats was going back to the United Nations and saying, hey, look, something got to be done here. And so it embarrassed the Johnson administration so much, and embarrassed the American government so much, that they had to hasten the passage of these civil rights, because they were looking bad on the international stage. Right. So so when we talk about, the Africans never supported us, well, support is not just militarily. They weren't in a position militarily to do anything to anybody, but they supported us on the international front in the United Nations, and and how and in the way of how they have opened up is even better now, but how they opened up their countries to African Americans.
Right.
So so now you got like 3 or 4 countries that offer us citizenship now.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And you also have this one nation, because you and I, the king that came to here that apologized for their role in slavery.
Yeah, the king of was it Togo?
Yeah, I can't remember. Benin.
Yeah. Benin. It was the king of Benin.
Well, the king of Benin did a tour here about a couple years ago,
mm-hmm.
and he was on this tour to apologize to us for the role that his tribe played in the slave trade. Benin, to this day, every year, it's a national holiday where they have a national atonement
mm-hmm.
for their role in the African slave trade. That is a holiday for them.
And
mm-hmm. right. I'm saying that this is something that the whole nation does.
Right.
Once a year.
And they've been doing it for the past, this was 2-3 years ago when we went to that ceremony. They've been doing this at that point for a decade.
Right, for about 10 years.
Yeah. And when he made the speech, he said that, his family, because apparently he is a direct descendant of the king who was the head of the tribe at the time, who was involved. He said that at the time, their people did not know where people were taken. And when they found out what was happening to people that they were, involved in this venture with, they were appalled and ashamed, and they stopped. So there's this. So there's a lot of history that is not that long ago that flies in the face and absolutely refutes a lot of the strange ideas that people have about our connection to Africa. I mean, just
their connection to us,
and their connection to us. I mean, just the fact that we're not talking about every region and every tribe and every king and every or ruler on the continent being involved in the slave trade. Wow. We're talking maybe 4, perhaps 5 kings out of hundreds of kingdoms. And of the kingdoms that were directly impacted by the transatlantic slave trade, most fought back from the beginning. They fought from the beginning, and even of the ones who were involved, if you want to call it that, because I mean, how do you trade equally with someone who is a greater military force than you, that has the ability to wipe you out? I mean, do we really think that these Portuguese and other Europeans were going to these folks and saying, look, we want to trade these, we'll give you this stuff for those people? And if those rulers said no, do we seriously think that those people were like, okay, and walked away and went somewhere else? Come on now.
Well, as I heard one African teacher say one time, is that what really happened was the Europeans threatened a lot of these kings with enslavement if they did not comply
themselves.
So the European, I mean, come on, it's no secret that the European had the technology of the gun. And they had they're warlike people. So, and they warlike people. I mean, that's all they did. So, they took Chinese gunpowder and turned it into a lethal weapon.
Yeah, it was supposed to be for happy fireworks. And what do they do? They take it and kill people with it.
So, I mean, we have to understand that the human condition is not always as simple as we wanted to make it seem. So you're talking about people, as you said, Jackie, who was going up against a much stronger foe, and come on, in the end, man, it's about your own survival.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, and we have to understand that Africans, we say that term, but they didn't see themselves like the way we like to see them now. I mean, they see themselves as separate nations.
Right.
So the Yoruba, the Igbo, the Hausa. The Fulani, so they're all black, but but they were also separate nations too. So I mean, look, if you got the Portuguese coming to the Fulani and saying, look, we need some slaves, and they just fought the Yoruba and got some of them, then it's like, well, look, Fulani come first. You know what I mean?
I mean,
Yeah, so it wasn't, because there was no race. The white man made the race concept. So nobody looked at themselves as, being black or being this or being that. That construct came along with the European because they had to justify that evil and barbarity that they were doing.
Right. So, I mean, for me, I learned all this later on, right? Because I had some of the same questions, because like you, I grew up in the Christian church, and I grew up in like a Southern Baptist Christian church. So I was indoctrinated. Ooh, Lord, the white Jesus was everywhere. And I grew up in a small town, 90 miles south of Richmond, Jarrett, Virginia, where the Klan was definitely, they definitely ran things for a minute. My grandmother worked in, she was a cook in truck stops. There used to be Highway 301 used to be the main highway from north to south.
Yeah.
Before I-95 was built. So there were all these truck stops along 301. And in our little town, the 2 or 3 truck stops there, my grandmother must have worked at like 2 of them. And I remember learning that my mom integrated her high school, but never really learning about racism when I was growing up, because everybody we lived around was black. We lived in the black part of town, right? And we really didn't have a whole lot of interaction with white people until like we went to school or we went to town or downtown, the little bit at Main Street, pretty much, which it's not a main anything. It's seriously just like a stoplight. But, we didn't have a lot of, there was not an occasion growing up for my family to talk about race with us. My grandmama wasn't like that. She was an extremely spiritual woman. That woman read her Bible every day. But the funny thing about my grandmother was she taught me how to be radical before I even knew what it was. Right. So there was one time when she came home from work and she was really, really mad. And I was like, Grandma, what's the matter? And she said, oh, those white people at that job. And I had never heard her say anything bad about white people, just because we never talked about them.
Right.
And I was like, well, what's the matter with the white people? These white women who they laugh and smile in your face while they're cooking over the pot. But as soon as their racist ass, and that was the first time I'd heard my grandma cuss. As soon as their racist ass, Klan ass husbands come up in the truck stop, oh, there, this nigga this and nigga that.
Right.
And I was like, what?
Yeah.
I think I was like 10 or 11 or something like that. And she said to me, she said, listen, I know that the Bible tells us that we're supposed to love everybody. And I try to. She said, but let me tell you something. You can't trust white people. She said, I don't care how good they are. You got to watch them if you want to survive in this world.
Now, this is her experience she's telling you.
This is my grandma, who at the time, I don't know how old she is. She's always been my grandma. So she's always been like this old lady as far as I knew, as far as I was concerned. But she had already lived through segregation. She'd lived through, I think she was born by 1919, I'm sure. So she had lived through the Red Summer of 1919. Her husband went to war in World War II, came back with a medal and no benefits. Yeah. Her brother-in-law, brother-in-law, I think, fought in World War I, earned a Purple Heart. That we found.
Yeah.
No benefits. All these people were poor, struggling, black folks, right? So that was like the first indication of like racism or but nobody ever really talked about Africa either. I mean, because they just really didn't have any reason to. Until, I went back to church as an adult. I had my own, issues with my mom died when I was 22. That was in 96. And, I had kind of a mental breakdown or whatever. So I had an issue with alcohol where I literally like drank myself into a 3-year blackout where there's like 3 years I have no idea what happened other than I went to work. And I just had this idea, maybe I should give, faith another try, because I had not gone to church for years. But I knew that I didn't like the Southern Baptist kind of thing and it was personal because my aunt had a baby out of wedlock, and the people in the church, this is how trashy some of these folks can be. And my mother told me this story. The people in the church tried to make my aunt stand up in front of the church and apologize for getting pregnant out of wedlock.
Wow.
And my mother, this other lesson in being radical and standing up for yourself in spite of, the odds you're faced with, my mother said, no, I went to that church. When I found out what they were doing, I went to the church and snatched her out from the front of that church and told those people that don't nobody owe you shit. She doesn't owe you anything. Did you get her pregnant? You gonna take care of this baby? And where is the nigga that knocked her up? Why isn't he standing here? So this is the kind of like DNA that I have in me, right? So I'm not looking for, another one of these Southern Baptist white Jesuses, obey and pray and everything is going to be all right kind of churches.
Right.
And I thought I'd found that. And I rocked with this church for a little while. But then something happened. I can't remember what happened, but there was no response. It was some police thing. This was long before, this was around 2000. So it may have been the Rodney King issue, I think. Maybe, I'm not sure, but I can't remember what it was, but there was some racial incident that was like a national thing. And now that I think about it, it probably wasn't the Rodney King thing, but I'm asking my pastor, like, why are we not focusing on this issue? And then I started to hear from this dude, well, look, the Bible tells us that we're supposed to obey authority and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, yeah, that's not working for me.
Right.
That's really not working for me. And the reason that was not working for me was because before my mom passed, she got back into church. And this is how I think I got into Pan-Africanism in just like the most roundabout kind of way, which is kind of typical for me. I never got into anything through a straight line. It's just really strange. But this is a Bible that my mom bought. And it is very special because I'm hoping you can see this. This is the African Heritage Study Bible. Now, I can't remember the year this came out, but when this Bible was published, my mom went out and bought 4 copies of it. And she bought 4 copies of this Bible because this Bible maps out the African presence of every person, every event, every location in the Bible. It explains that there are all kinds of footnotes in here about, the African, the modern location in Africa where some of these events happened, the ancestral African lineage that many of the people in this Bible, in many of the stories have. But honestly, the part that I liked the most was that the pictures, how every Bible has like the pictures in the middle.
Yeah.
The pictures in this Bible are all full of Black people. I don't know if you can see that really well, but my mom bought this Bible, and she and I began to study the Bible together and connect Africa with our Christian faith. And we realized that our Christian faith is African, right? Because a lot of what happened in the Bible happened in Africa. And then I remember reading this particular, they had a lot of commentaries in here too. And I think the thing that really, really like got me was this commentary on Jesus Christ and the poor in here. And this is a couple of pages long. And it really digs into talking about the importance that Jesus placed on being an advocate for and taking care of the poor. And that changed my whole perspective on my faith and on who I was as a person.
Right.
Because my mom and I we would like sit there on Friday nights and like I would get her care package, which was a 6-pack of Schlitz Bull and a pack of Newports.
Hey, that used to be mine too.
And I would get my 6-pack of Rolling Rock, and we would sit there and read. We would watch Tony Brown's Journal, and talk about politics. And then she would tell me, I was reading in Revelation, or I was reading in Acts, or I was reading in this. And what do you think? And we'd pull out the African Heritage Study Bible, and get into it and chop it up and disagree. And that's how I came to realize that everything people told me about my faith as a Christian was bullshit.
Right.
It was all this stuff about white Jesus. That was like a revelation for me. I'm like, wait, you mean not only was Jesus not white, but Moses won't white, Abraham won't white. The fact that Abraham is not white, and he is the father of all of the Abrahamic religions.
Right.
So that was like the first kind of intellectual awakening that, hey, what I believe is not right.
Right. Or the way that it's been presented to you wasn't right.
Yeah. The way that it was presented to me wasn't right. And that started to get me to question, well, what else in this book is bullshit?
Right.
But I didn't, because some of the stuff didn't make sense. I appreciated the maps. I appreciated the grounding, the biblical stories in the continent and bringing it to the modern day, and placing these beliefs squarely in Africa, which also places Islam in Africa, which also places Judaism in Africa, right? But there's also, because I'm studying this and getting all excited about, there's all this Africa in here. What else? I noticed, well, there's a lot of stuff in here that doesn't make sense. Why are we stoning people to death because they're wearing women's clothes? Why is the Bible telling us in the Old Testament that we're supposed to treat the stranger among us like their family, and we're not supposed to mistreat visitors, and we're supposed to take care of the poor, but if you can work, you should. But then we've got people talking about this group of folks is the chosen people. That makes no sense. Right? So these questions pop up in my mind because my mom was that curious, and she passed that curiosity on to me, starting with this book.
Right.
But then it didn't stop there, because my mother read everything. And by everything, I mean, this woman had books on witchcraft. She had books on ancient religions. She bought a copy of The Exorcist and hid it under my aunt's bed because my aunt was terrified of the movie.
Wow.
And my mom was a prankster, but and I swear that's where I got my love of horror movies, because it was my mama that snuck me and my cousin in to see The Exorcist when it was playing at the drive-in movie.
Right.
But my mom read everything. If it had anything to do with Africa, if it had anything to do with Black people, she bought it. She read it. And then she passed it on to me. So she bought the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And once she read it, she was like, you got to read this.
Right.
And, I mean, when I read it, I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm reading, but this sure is fascinating. And, I read it again. And yeah, there's some great stuff in there. This is crazy. This is Ben Ami, who used to be a leader of the Hebrew Israelites.
Right.
But again, my mom just saw a book with a black person on it that had to do with spirituality. She was like, well, let's see what they have to say.
They have to say this,
right. You know, so she read this book and I remember she said, you know, some of the stuff he says in here is great, but some of the stuff he says in here, he crazy as hell. Ain't nobody doing all that shit. You know, she bought the black presence in the Bible, right? And this is written by Reverend Walter Arthur McCrae. This is pretty cool. History of Black Baptists. You know? And then, let's see, there's some other stuff. But then, you know, so that was like my foundation for connecting. I just realized that she put her name right there. That's her. I save just about everything I can with her handwriting. But she passed those books on to me. You know, she passed that knowledge on to me. She passed that thirst for knowledge onto me, and it never stopped because it got worse in college. So in college, I was in the honors English program. The movie Malcolm X comes out.
Right.
My honors English professor says you should be on the symposium analyzing Malcolm X. I'd never spoken publicly outside of church, like being the MC at the church program, right? So I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. That's crazy. I'm not going to do it. He's like, well, I tell you what, if you don't do it, you're gonna fail my class, which was bullshit. Wow. Because I was in honors English. I was doing well, but that was his way to get me to do it. And I did. And of course, in the process of preparing for the symposium, I read Malcolm, The Life of a Man Who Changed America. Mm-hmm. I read Malcolm X As They Know Him. And then that got me into shit like this.
Yep, there you go.
Like this right here. This, and where did it go? Oh, there it is. These two books right here. I after the symposium, the first symposium, my professor gave me this book to read, The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. And he said, take some time to read this. I think you will enjoy it and come back and tell me what you think. And I read it, and it took me all semester to read it because it's so full of stuff, information. And I read it, and I went back to him, and I said, how much have they been keeping from us about us?
Yep.
And he said, I'm glad you asked that. And then he gave me this. The Black Jacobins by C.L.R. James. Oops. And then the next symposium we had was on C.L.R. James. So then I had to read this, the C.L.R. James reader. So I came to my understanding of Pan-Africanism through reading, finding out information that I didn't know about us before, being really pissed off that all of this great information about what was done to Africa impacts us and how it looks so much like what we go through here. And if the powers that be, and I slowly came to this realization, hun, that if the powers that be spent this much time and energy keeping all of this information and a whole lot more from us about what they did to Africa, then Africa must be pretty fucking important. And I can't just look at myself as someone who was here because of slavery. I have to be serious about my connection to these people on this continent that's been not just like shrouded in mystery, right? But has been like covered up intentionally by so-called Western, American, European, British, Swedish, Belgian, German, quote unquote scholars.
I mean, it's like you're saying to yourself, it was taking a lot of effort on their part to make us feel like nobody.
Exactly. To make us feel like we don't belong to those people and those people don't matter. Well, I mean, if you want, if you're going to go through that much to disconnect me from those other people, I gotta believe that that something important is in us being connected.
Right.
So that's how I kind of came to Pan-Africanism. And later on, I learned about, things like, I'm just going to share a couple of things with you as we're kind of drawn to a close here. Later on, I learned about things like, let's see, where are you? The Barbados and Carolina connection. The fact that, South Carolina was a colony of Barbados. So I got people in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm. I got a large family still in South Carolina, and my roots from my mother's side come from there.
I got people in North Carolina.
Yep.
I mean, so according to, and this is just stuff that we find on the web from looking up other stuff. By the late 1660s, Barbados, fueled by the production of sugar, had become the wealthiest English colony in Americas. Rather than the rather sudden boom of sugar wealth altered the society and economy of Barbados, and the island's new culture quickly became the standard for English possessions in the West Indies. The wealth also brought a population boom as people flocked to Barbados, an island 1/5 the size of present-day Charleston, to make their fortune. By 1670, Barbados's population was estimated in 60,000 inhabitants, which approximately 60% being African enslaved people. And a lot of those people went to the colony of South Carolina, which was a colony of Barbados.
Mm-hmm.
So when we learn these things and we find out that a lot of the people who are descended from a lot of those people in Barbados, a lot of people in South Carolina, a lot of the black folk in South Carolina are descended from those African folk who were enslaved on the island of Barbados. How are we not connected with those people?
Right.
If those African slaves who were enslaved on Barbados came from the continent,
right?
How are we not connected with those people?
Another thing that they don't talk about either is that that Haiti was so profitable that a large part of what wound up becoming the Louisiana Purchase, but a lot of that land was used as farmland to feed the people in Haiti.
Mm-hmm.
To feed, because Haiti was such a rich colony.
Mm-hmm.
So, so the French were using that also as food sources,
Right.
So I mean, America and these countries did not gain their wealth individually.
No.
I mean, so this is the reason why this whole thing of being anti-Pan-Africanist doesn't make any sense. When white people went to Africa, they went as a whole. When they conquered Africa through Pan-Europeanism. If that's what you want, if there's a
that's
term
a great
for that.
point.
Yeah,
that's a great point.
I mean, it took all of Europe to conquer Africa. The Belgian, not the Belgian, the Berlin Conference,
mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
The Berlin Conference, all these white nations got together to carve Africa up. So they united based on race. And they united based on agenda.
That was a pan-European conference.
That was a pan-European conference. So so they understood what it meant to stay together. And every time these white nations, even today, when they say the West, what do they mean the West?
Right.
When they say the West, they ain't just talking about the United States.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about Britain, France, Germany, all
mm-hmm.
of them. So
mm-hmm.
every time they make a move based on race first.
Right.
They make a move based on their agenda first. They make a move on what's best for white European people. Even if they live in Australia, what is good for white European people. So, so for us to sit up here and say that that we can go up against this type of thinking
by ourselves.
Yeah, by ourselves.
Talk about we Americans.
Yeah, like the Haitians got to go fight France, and the Brazilians got to fight Portugal, and that ain't how they got it like that. They got it like that by joining together as forces and enslaving everybody.
Exactly. Oh, this is the other part of history that I love. We got 5 minutes left, but I did not want to leave this out. This is so incredibly important. We gotta end with this. We gotta end with this. This is so incredibly important. Do you know how important it is that to the United States government that Africans in this country, and we believe we are African. We call ourselves African because of everything we just told you about how we came to Pan-Africanism. We believe we are African. You can call yourself whatever you'd like. That's you. That's on you. That's fine. Jackie and Baba, we call ourselves African. You want to know how important it has been to the United States that Africans in this country do not support Africans on the continent? Let's go back to, let's see, what year was this? This was 1935. What was going on in 1935?
Well,
Baba historian.
Well, 1935, you talking about in the world?
Particularly.
Well, you had the rise of fascism during that time. You had Mussolini. The Nazis were empowering Germany. You had the Spanish Civil War that was happening under Franco. So you had this, you're talking about this was during the Great Depression. Right. And so a lot of people around the world were, including America, were looking at fascism as a reasonable choice because of the failure of global capitalism, which brought on the Great Depression. So they were like, even in America, Roosevelt had to fight off the growing influence of communism and socialism and capitalism. So and even threatened the capitalists of that day, like, hey, look, you want another Bolshevik revolution here? Right. That's what's going to happen if y'all don't get up off that money.
And you have to remember that there were communist organizations, socialist organizations right here in the United States advocating for just that thing. Right. So the United States, and they were making connections with Russia and with trying to make connections with folks on the continent, particularly in Ethiopia, because Ethiopia was one of the few African nations that was not colonized. Right? Yeah. So Mussolini, the first fascist, that we can definitely arguably say, decided the first modern fascist decided to invade Ethiopia. Well, this is a great piece of history that we should never ever forget. Not just Harlem, but every major black city, predominantly black city in this country, Detroit, Washington, D.C., Chicago, tried to garner support for Africans in this country to go to Ethiopia to help Ethiopia fight off Mussolini. Right. Now, we have to explain why that happened. Why did that happen?
Well, why Black Americans signed up? Well, for one thing, look, Mussolini wanted to, he wanted to reinstitute the Roman Empire, right? Now, Ethiopia didn't have a standing army, but one of the things, and so people, let me just get to the chase. People might say, well, why is it? Because, this is what we Negroes say now. I don't got nothing to do with Africa. Why do I got to be a Pan-Africanist and all that stuff? But those people at the time in Harlem, why would African Americans, who most of them weren't of Ethiopian lineage, right? So why would they care about Italians Mussolini taking over Ethiopia? I'll tell you why. It was the Garveyist influence, because Garvey was based in Harlem, and this took place in the 1930s. Garvey's peak moments in Harlem was in the 1920s, probably up to the 1930s, a little bit above. But UNIA was still in operation, even though Garvey was deported. Right. The influence of UNIA was still there. So a lot of black people, even if they weren't part of UNIA or not, remember what we said earlier. There was at least one family member. Somebody was connected to Garvey.
That's right.
All you got to do is look at the movie Malcolm X and see how Malcolm X's father and how aggressive Garveyites was at promoting the philosophies of Garvey. So so they were real. I mean, Malcolm X's father got killed for that. I'm supposed a lot of black people got killed for that. So when you had that type of aggressive promotion of this form of Pan-Africanism, whether you was part of the movement or not, you couldn't help but be influenced by that. You couldn't help but catch that. And I think that gave black people more of an understanding of the importance of what Africa is. I mean, being colonized over here, and also seeing that, being under the thumb of white supremacy here, and then seeing Ethiopia, being, like you said, the last uncolonized African nation. Now look at that. It's the last uncolonized African nation. I mean, the rest of the continent was under white control. Right. So when you have this constant, when you had these teachings and this influence from Garvey, the Garveyist movement, then that instilled a sense of nationalism, Pan-African nationalism within the people of Harlem. Right. Not all of them, but there was enough people of Harlem signing up to fight for Ethiopia that the United States shut it down. Right. And that's what we want to get to, because Simbroska makes the comment, Ethiopia and the Spanish Civil War were happening around the same time. Many working class people in the U.S. were activated, but many working class people in the U.S. were not blocked from going to the country that they wanted to support in the Civil War. Yeah, they weren't blocked to go into Spain. They weren't blocked to go into Spain. Right. Only black people in this country who signed up to go to Ethiopia to defend Ethiopia against Mussolini were blocked by the State Department from going. This article points that out. It says almost all volunteers were blocked from leaving by the U.S. government, which threatened imprisonment if they chose to bear arms alongside Ethiopians and adopt their military uniform. I want to say this real quick. Isn't that consistent that white people don't want blacks to have arms? Woo! Come on now. Isn't that consistent? And you think that we're not affected by it now? Every place in this country, the toughest gun laws is where black people live. So it wasn't so much about not fighting for Ethiopia. The fight is to arm black people. Man, they know what the hell they was doing to us. Exactly. Now remember, you point this out, and please indulge us a few extra minutes, y'all. You point this out that blacks had already fought in World War I. Well, see, that's the thing. This was the problem with the United States government. There was no enthusiasm on the part of black people to fight in World War II. The United States government came out, the U.S. Army came out with educational films to try to get black people motivated to get behind the war effort. Now they say, well, why? Well, we here in 2021 would say, well, yeah, they shouldn't have to be. But you got to understand something. Black people had got screwed in World War I. So the attitude of the black community in World War II was different in World War I, where black folks was like, this is our shot. If we showed these white people that we're really Americans, we could show that by going to war fighting for this country. Right. Well, what happened? They came back, got lynched in their uniforms. Right, the Red Summer of 1919. Red Summer 1919. So the black community, when World War II came around, black community was like, that's y'all stuff. Fuck y'all. Yeah, because they had did interviews at that time when you had black people who were saying they didn't care who won because their condition was going to be the same regardless. Right. Well, that worried the United States government because they were afraid that the Germans or the Japanese or enemy of America would take advantage of that division within America. In fact, Hitler, one of the reasons why Hitler didn't take America seriously when he was told by his generals that America might enter the war, Hitler said that he didn't consider America a threat because they will never be able to come together as a nation to fight, to come together as a nation to be effective fighters. Because the racial division is too much. Right. And how would Hitler know that? Because outside of Germany, the largest group of Nazis was here in the United States.
The largest gathering of Nazis happened in the United States in Madison Square Garden. So had the attack on Pearl Harbor not happened, that was the only thing that galvanized a lot of the population in the United States to move from being isolationists and actually kind of pro-fascist with a lot of folks to saying, oh, wait, now we can't have people attacking us on our own soil. That's what got a lot of folks, including some black folks, into World War II. Had that never happened, yeah, that would have been a whole different history.
And I just want to answer because somebody said something about the Soviets. The Soviets wasn't the Soviets are out of Britain, out of the United States, and Canada. The Soviet Union was the only country, white country, that had in their constitution that racial discrimination was illegal.
And let's not forget that it was actually the Soviet Union that won.
It was
the Red Army,
right,
of the Soviet Union that actually won World War II. It was not the United States.
No, the Russians were so tolerant when it came to racial issues that you had black people immigrate from here to Russia. In fact, we when I mean we, Luqman Nation, we put up a video that RT Russian today that they did a documentary on the black descendants of Black American descendants who grew up in the Soviet Union. You know, one of them live in D.C. right now. Came back to America, live right here in D.C. So so we have to purge ourselves of all of this false propaganda that we sat up in class and learned, that we said all this other kind of stuff. The Russian, the world, Germany would have eventually lost the war. The Russians hastened it
a lot. I mean, and it cost them, what was 25 million
people?
So yeah, and we'll talk about that on another day. But let's finish up with this thing. Let's be clear about what the United States did with black people wanting to go to Ethiopia to defend it against fascist Italian invasion. According to a federal statute, it was a criminal offense for an American citizen to support any country that was not an ally of the United States. Keep that in mind, because we're going to get to that in a second. Harlem Renaissance leader and civil rights activist W.E.B. Du Bois, who was also a Pan-Africanist and an internationalist, argued at the time that Western powers would have responded to the invasion if Ethiopia were a white nation. He ain't lie. Demonstrators faced hostile pushback from the police while tensions mounted between the black community and some 100,000 Italians that originally called Harlem their Little Italy until the 1950s. Despite desperate appeals, lawmakers and the State Department successfully prevented all African Americans from traveling to fight under the Ethiopian flag. That is, except for a few brave individuals who slipped under the radar.
Some American black men who were able to slip by and fight on the side of the Ethiopians. So, but why was that such a threat to the American government that they actually had? Obviously, they didn't even abide by their own law because it was against the law for any American citizen.
Right.
So, so any American citizen. But they only enforced the law when it came to black people.
Yep.
And because if black people in mass would have went over and fought for Ethiopia, then that would have destabilized the whole white supremacist infrastructure that they had in Africa. Because you're talking about something that would have been a domino effect. The same way that they feared when the Haitian Revolution happened, how that domino, they were afraid of the domino effect of that happening in the colonies at the time. So, I mean, so the thing of it is that to keep us stupid, keep us powerless.
Yep. And here's the other side of that issue with, the United States government.
And then we will end with this.
Yes, we will end with this, with the United States government keeping African Americans from going to Ethiopia to fight against fascism. Well, how come the United States didn't do the same thing for some Italians or from white Americans who went to where was this? Who went to Spain to fight for Franco?
Right.
The fascist Franco,
who was also backed up by the Nazis. In fact, the Luftwaffe that they used the Spanish Civil War as training for the Luftwaffe, which was the Nazi Air Force.
Right. So this is an article, the transcript of an interview that is on NPR of a guy who is a historian. He wrote a book about the Spanish Civil War, the first battle of World War II. And this little paragraph in here, if you don't read it carefully, you'd miss it, but it's extremely important. Hemingway is one of the people written about by today's guest, Adam Hochschild, in his book, Spain in Our Hearts, Americans in the Spanish Civil War, 1936 to 1939. It's now out in paperback. Most of the people he writes about fought on the side of, quote unquote, democracy. But some supported Franco, including CEO of Texaco, who supplied the fascists with the fuel they needed for their trucks and bombers. Listen, I'll drop this link in here for you as well. People can come to their ideology however they like. And I am convinced that people, that Africans in this country who believe they're not African and align themselves more with America come to that conclusion for two reasons. Number one, desperation, because they do, I think they do sincerely believe that the only way they're going to get anything from this country is by playing the game of, wrapping themselves in this flag. But we just talked about how that ain't work for us. Well, our people have gone to war in the uniform of this nation, behind the flag of this nation, came back and were lynched by this nation. Yep. So we understand that doesn't work. But the other reason they believe this is because they don't know history. Well, that you look at ADOS, you look at FBA, you look at a lot of these new movements that's coming around. And one of the things that they all have in common is a lack of understanding and a lack of respect for the role that history plays in all of this. Again, it's trying to reinvent the wheel, but you don't got all the parts. Right. So for the Luqmans, for us, we came to our Pan-Africanism through our experiences with our people, finding those experiences lacking in wanting to connect with our people and our history, and learning that history. For both of us, it came from sitting under the tutelage of somebody who directed us and guided us and said, have you read this book? Right. Well, here is this, what's going on. Did you know this about this person? And did you know that Malcolm X went to the continent? Did you know that Martin Luther King Jr. went to Ghana? Did you know that Fannie Lou Hamer went to Ghana too? Right. Did you know that Kwame Nkrumah and Muammar Gaddafi, two different time periods, that what they both had in common is they wanted a united Africa. The United States of Africa. They wanted that. Right. Garvey wanted a United States of Africa. Wanted a United States of Africa. Yep. So we're Pan-Africanists because we know a lot. Well, I don't even feel comfortable saying a lot of the history. We knew enough of the history to inform our ideology and our identity to make it clear to us that we are African. And you're right. And some of us just don't want to be free. And that's okay too. Like I said, I've been in organizations where people debate how many angels is on the head of a pin and all this other kind of stuff. We major in the minor in the major. And so some of us just don't want to be free. And so we look for any excuse not to be free. Right. I'm Pan-Africanist because I see it as the only success that has been shown to us. But look, that's not. I mean, if that's not, what I'm saying is that we're not a monolithic people, and so everybody has their approach. But people bring up Dr. Claude Anderson, and as much respect as I have for him, black people don't listen to him either. You know why they don't listen to him? Because he said it. He was on the radio one time, and somebody said, how is black people responding to what you're saying? Claude Anderson said himself, he said, black people don't care what I got to say. They don't listen to me. And that's the thing. We bring up these people, right, but we don't really listen to them. Right. I mean, because the very people who are trying to shoot us down because we're Pan-Africanists, bringing up Claude Anderson, y'all ain't doing shit Claude said. Nope. So why are you wasting your time over here telling us that you have a problem with us being Pan-Africanists when you're not even following whatever path it is that you think works for you. Here's what you do know about the Luqmans. We follow the path we believe in. Regardless of what anybody else says or does, we follow the path we believe in. That's all we believe we owe ourselves and the people we are in this struggle with to do. We don't owe nobody nothing else.
And also, and this is my last word. Also, we don't care what you call yourself. Just do the work.
Good.
You know what I mean? Just do the work. You know what I mean? Don't care what you call yourself. You want to call yourself anything, just do the work, because all of us are under the pressure. Under us, all of us are got the white man's foot on our neck. No matter what title you call yourself. So you know what? So when we look at it that way, that you ain't free and I ain't free, no matter what you call yourself, and you cannot negotiate your way out of this by yourself.
Don't shoot me. I'm ADOS. I'm FBI. FBA.
And you ain't gonna magically change into nothing else because that's what you wish to do. So you're oppressed. I'm oppressed. The continent is oppressed. All of us with black skin is oppressed. Call yourself what you want, but guess what? You in this boat, whether you like it or not.
So that's why the Luqmans are Pan-Africanists. Friday, we're coming back with some friends to talk some more about Pan-Africanism and why we believe Pan-Africanism is important and needed. Look, if you ain't into it, you don't have to join. That's cool. But we appreciate you sticking around with us tonight for a little extra time here on Black Power Media. We got a study group we're supposed to be in and learning some more stuff in. So we appreciate y'all. As always, look, subscribe, share, join Black Power Media support on Patreon. You can find Black Power Media on Patreon and all that good stuff. We appreciate you. And look, as always, like the eternal chairman Fred Hampton used to say, I say to you, peace, if you are willing to fight for it. How about let's stop fighting each other and fight for peace?
Yeah, fight the white man.
How about that?
Yeah, go ahead and fight him.
Okay, I might get a new person.
How they came and they on top when I'm a mile up. Had them on long before it dial up. How they came and they on top when I'm a mile up. I know the wall's closing in, but don't you dare give up now. Poe believed in me, pull up through some bucks down. Todd told the valet pull the truck round. Push the line up that we drew it, it's just us now. Would you believe me if I told you my granny told me she prayed this? They booked the surgery just to pull me out of the basement.
Sing it.
Right back where I started,
Sing it.
show for a facelift. Got
Who you
first playing, walked
You picked it. And you gonna talk about my purse.
Rapping like your Spotify, tap you rappers compromise. Yeah, no need to panic, just paint the canvas. If you can feel